It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the March 18, 2019 Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. Roll call, Commissioner Clare. Here. Commissioner Littlefield. Here. Commissioner Hale. Here, sir. Commissioner Schuline. Here. Commissioner Miller. Here. Commissioner George. Here. Commissioner Milner. Here. I'd like to have a motion concerning the minutes of the February 18, 2019 meeting, please.
Motion to approve.
Motion from Commissioner Hale to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Milner. Do we have any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 18, 2019 meeting from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Milner. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. The report on license and taxi and record services will be next month. We go to the consent docket. Is there anybody here wishing to speak against an item on the consent docket? There's two items. Okay, do we have any staff input on the consent docket?
No, we're recommending approval on both items.
All right, thank you. We have a motion concerning item 4, the consent docket.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Hale to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 4, consent docket by Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5, 5A, Keith Johnson, President, Central Oklahoma Winelson Company, to consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of North Purdue Avenue and Northwest 10th Street. Do we have anybody here who wants to speak on this item? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got our comments before you. In this particular item, this intersection does not meet any of the signal warrants, so at this point in time, we don't have cause to recommend that the Commission approve a traffic signal at this location. If the Commission does vote to approve a location, it should be subject to staff recommendations, which would be the addition of turn lanes on Northwest 10th Street. Aside from that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do we have a motion concerning 5A?
So there's nobody here to speak on it?
Nobody here to speak on it.
Move to disapprove.
We have a motion from Commissioner George to disapprove item 5A. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Do we have any talk on item 5A? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5A from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. We go on now to item 5B, John M. Fudge, to consider a request for a mid-block pedestrian crossing on North Chartel Avenue, approximately 170 feet south of the south curb line of West Sheridan Avenue. Anybody here to speak on item 5B? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got our comments before you. Action on this matter is going to be at the discretion of the Commission. If the Commission votes to approve it, staff is recommending that it be subject to the applicant bearing responsibility for the preparation of construction documents to build ADA accessible wheelchair ramps on both sides of the crossing and to be responsible for that construction. Afterwards, if approved, the city would be responsible for installing signs and marking the crossing. Aside from that, this is just a location that's in between two signalized intersections. It's just crossing a two-lane roadway. And everything else relative to collision history and speeds is there in your staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do we have a motion concerning item 5B, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, before we make a motion, did we hear from the applicant? Did anyone hear? You didn't hear from the applicant whether to defer this or anything?
No, we sent out notices to everybody who's made an application for the Commission agenda, and I didn't get confirmation from everyone who received one, so I can't tell you what their status is.
The next two, actually, these two applications are tied together, aren't they? No, I'm sorry, that's the next one. Okay, this one. But I'd move that it be tabled till next month. Is that okay?
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to table item 5B to next month. Do we have a second on that one?
Second.
a second by Commissioner George. Okay, any talk about item 5B?
Since the applicant's not here, I would be fine approving this, but if they would say that they would pay for it. So they're not here, they can't say they would or wouldn't, so I think if we just table it, it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Any other talk, sir?
Have we had any notice from the applicant? I mean, have they been made aware that they would be responsible for the funding of the project if approved?
When we send out the application, we use the same it's kind of a blind copied email. It's the same message that every member on the commission gets, and it provides applicants a link to the city's website where they can go and they can see their agenda items. So they've had access to the entire agenda.
All right, any other talk on item 5B? Yes, sir.
I'm a little concerned that the speed limit on the strip is just 25 miles an hour, right? They're not in the volume. I mean, I can understand why you probably didn't recommend this be approved, but I'd be a little concerned we may be setting a bad precedent here, too. Something to think about.
Okay. Any other talk on item 5B? Okay, we have a motion to defer item 5B till next month from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner George. Can I have your votes? Hold on one more, please.
And so just to be clear, the tabling it next month means moving it to the April 15th meeting.
April 15th, okay? All right, so the motion is from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner George, to table item 5B to the April 15th meeting. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is moved. We go on now to item 5C, Dean Colita, PEKBGE, Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc., to consider a request to establish a full-time passenger loading zone on the west side of North Harvey Avenue from approximately 45 feet south to 77 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 10th Street. Hi, sir. I need your name, address, and then when you're done, you can fill one of these out, please.
I'm actually for the applicant.
Right, yeah, but still, if you could fill one of these out later. Thank you.
Dean Colita, KBGE Engineering, 4045 Northwest 64th Street. Here on behalf of the applicant, the collective, essentially on our plan here, due to the streetcar on the north side and the ability to access the new restaurant that's being built there on the north and also on the east side, that would be a better idea to have the loading zone be established off of Harvey to help avoid the streetcar, any type of instance of people pulling up and stopping and blocking it. So it seems like from a safety standpoint and a loading standpoint, it would be the most efficient use for that space. There's already existing widened area there that's already striped. So essentially we would just be creating a little inlet that will allow trucks to come in and park and to load, and also for a valet zone. And that's the next item on the agenda. So got any questions, let me know.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Is anybody else wanting to speak on item 5C? Okay, staff input, please.
All right, you've got our comments before you, and as the applicant alluded to, they're proposing the construction of a, comparatively speaking, it's a narrow lay-by. However, it's adjacent to an 8-foot lane, which has not been used for parking, because further to the south on both sides of Harvey, the on-street parking is allowed. So this is just providing an area that's slightly wider, and it'll allow people to be further off the edge of the driving lanes. So at this point in time, action will be at the discretion of the commission to designate this area as a passenger loading zone on a full-time basis. So staff is recommending that if approved, the motion needs to include the following conditions, which are that the loading zone's in effect on a full-time basis, the applicant bears responsibility for the preparation of construction drawings and all construction costs associated with building the lay-by, and that everything is built in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. And with respect to passenger loading purposes, that means that the loading area itself has to have at least an ADA accessible way through it.
Correct. Yeah, we agree to all those conditions. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Mr. Chairman, I move the application be approved with staff's recommendation.
We have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to approve item 5C, which includes the staff recommendations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Milner. Any discussion on item 5C? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Schuline, which includes the staff recommendations, seconded by Commissioner Milner. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5D, Dean Colita, PEKBGE, Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc., to consider a request to establish a valet loading zone within the passenger loading zone on the west side of North Harvey Avenue from approximately 45 feet south to 77 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 10th Street. Sir?
Dean Colita, KBGE, 4045 Northwest 64th Street. Yeah, similar to the last item, this same loading area zone, we're proposing to do a valet as well. So it help keep the cars coming out. People that come to load or want to park, they can get them out quicker. So, and they've talked to a couple of parking lots local nearby that will be used for that. So those haven't been established just yet, but they will be whenever this is, if approval is granted. So, if you've got any questions, feel happy to answer those.
All right, staff input.
Okay.
Under the conditions, we do agree to the conditions that you had on the staff report.
Okay. Just establishment of the loading zone within the same limits as the previously approved passenger loading zone would be an appropriate ancillary use. We don't have any specific supplemental recommendations relative to the consideration of this particular request, so it'll be at the discretion of the Commission. Just for the applicant's information, future users of this valet loading zone for valet purposes those individuals have to apply for a revocable valet permit, and that's something that's obtained through the Public Works Department.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5D?
Mr. Chairman, I move the application be approved.
We have a motion to approve item 5D from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any discussion on item 5D? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5D from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Thank you. For item, I'm sorry. Sir, did you fill out the blue form? Thank you. Thank you, Counselor. For item 5E, we'll go straight to staff comments.
Okay, the applicant contacted us after we had published the agenda, is not available to attend the meeting, so he's requested this item be continued to the April 15th meeting.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
Move to continue.
A motion from Commissioner George to move item 5E to the April 15th meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to move item 5E to the April 15th meeting from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item will be moved. Okay, we go on now to item F, Kia Trout, to consider a request for the installation of traffic signal at the intersection of Fenwick Boulevard and Northwest 164th Street. Do we have anybody here to speak on this item? Hello, ma'am.
I am. I'm Lori Ann Cowan, and I am
And if I could have your address, please.
17016 Granite Place.
Okay. And you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Lori Ann Cowan, and I came here today to support my neighborhood's request for action to be taken at 2 of our entrances by the way of stoplights or stop signs. I want to start out by saying thank you to all the people who have done the research and footwork to complete this report, and to all of you here today for taking the time regarding this matter. I want to give credit where credit is due also to Kia Trout, who initiated the process. She couldn't be here today, so I will read a short letter that she sent on her behalf. Dear OKC Traffic Commission, I am so excited that you are considering a stoplight at one of our neighborhood entrances. I feel that it would make it so much safer getting in and out, as well as making people slow down. I wish I could have been here today, however, I have a scheduling conflict. I am extremely thankful for wonderful neighbors like Lori Ann Cowan, who has taken on the task to present this to you in my absence. I am hopeful that other neighbors have shown up as well so that the commission can see just how important this is to our neighborhood. I appreciate all the help I've been given by Mary Coyne and Sarah Ferguson to get to this point, and I would hope that one or both lights could be approved. Sincerely, Kia Trout. So there has been and will continue to be a lot of growth as far as housing additions to the north of our neighborhood, which is at it's at 164th and then 164th and Penn, that area. Over the last year, north and south traffic has increased exponentially, affecting the flow of traffic coming out of our entrances. Between 7 and 9 a.m. and again around 5 to 7 p.m., it's become quite an exercise in caution to exit our neighborhood. Entering the neighborhood is not as much of an issue, so widening the main roads for a turning lane, I don't feel like that's pertinent, but others may disagree. I feel that a censored light or a stop sign allowing us to safely exit is the ounce of prevention needed. I believe that a part of our increase in traffic is due to road construction being done on Highway 74 at and to the north of Northwest 164th. People living to the north of 164th are having to find alternate routes traveling south to go to work, and Pennsylvania Avenue is one of them. The increased flow of traffic poses a significant risk to all of our neighbors, especially the new teenage drivers and elderly who may not be able to properly judge the gap risk. And it really is only a matter of time before someone ends up having a serious accident at our entrances, ending in disability, dismemberment, death. I don't want it to be my son, my husband, myself, or any of my neighbors that ends up having to suffer a terrible tragedy that can and should be prevented. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and full attention to this matter. If this was not a major concern, we wouldn't waste your time. And I hope that anyone else from Fenwick who has anything to add can be heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else that would like to speak? Well, we already have one. That's fine. All right.
Heather LaCare. I live at 168.
Wait, just a second. Just do it into the microphone, please.
My name's Heather LaCare. I live at 16800 Parkhurst Road. I also am in Fenwick. I live closer to the entrance that is not listed. However, the main entrance that's off of 164th, I use that if I'm coming from that direction. It's real hard to turn out, even of the Brahms that's down there, because of the amount of traffic that comes. I have worked in our emergency rooms for about 10 years, and I see the accidents and the people that, come in with pictures of their vehicles and all of their broken bones and their injuries. I don't have a clue what a stoplight costs, but I know that it is incredibly expensive to a person and what it does to their body when they have an injury from an accident, let alone loss of life. I know that there was a fatal accident coming out of another neighborhood, and I don't want us to be the next one that everybody knows about. There's a school that is on 100 and, maybe 75th something, and Penn. There's a lot of traffic that goes there with young kids. They're not necessarily crossing the street there, but especially at school time in the mornings when parents are trying to get there, there are a lot of kids in cars at that exit. And those kids are more vulnerable than adults to big injury. And now I recognize at least one other person from the neighborhood, so I won't.
All right, very good. Yes, sir? And I believe I already have your form.
Yes, I've
If I can have your name and
Jim D.
address.
Smith.
And sir, what's your address?
1309 Northwest 170th Street.
All right, thank you.
Edmond, 73012. I am in favor of this traffic signal. I think besides an inconvenience, it is a safety hazard there. My times are from 7 to 9 and from then about 3 o'clock actually until about 7 o'clock in the evening. It's very difficult to get in and out of that access. And again, it is a safety issue in that people get frustrated and they get impatient and make bad choices. But I am in favor of it.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Sir, if I could have your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Keith McElhaney, 16616 Covington Manor. I did notice on the staff report, it says the intersection does not appear to operate with excessive delay, nor does it appear to function with chronic localized congestion. I don't know what time of day they were looking, but as everybody said, from 7 to 9, it's dangerous to turn left, and from about 4 to 7, yeah. So, I mean, you can go right if you wait long enough, but it's really dangerous to turn left. And, you know, I mean, the staff report says because there's been no accidents, I mean, if we're going to wait for accidents to occur before we install a stoplight, you know, I mean, I think it's time. There's a lot of people trying to turn, and they're probably taking more chances than they need to. So yeah, so it's really congested during rush hour. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5F? Yes, ma'am. Oh, sure.
Like he was just saying, the accidents that you guys, that was reported, if you look back, that was for, what, 2015, 16, 17? This traffic situation has really just increased within the last year. And I'm a pet sitter. I get out early in the mornings. I travel. And this year, whenever school started for Oklahoma City this last year, I guess it's whenever they picked back up. But it was just like, it went from night to day. Pulling out of the neighborhood, it was like all of a sudden here's all this traffic. And it just continued and continued. And it just never stops. It just never stops. And everyone, you know, I took videos. I did not know that they had to be turned in a week in advance. I was kind of, this was a last minute thing for me to step in for Kia. But I did take videos, and if I was allowed to show them to you, I stood at the intersections and filmed, and watching people trying to get out of there, sitting in their cars, doing this, looking both ways. Everybody's getting backed up, getting antsier and antsier, and like I said before, young people, they make rash decisions. They're in a hurry to get to school. You know, they don't want that tardy. They don't want that problem. So they'll bolt out there. And one of these days, I mean, it just takes one time. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else on item 5F? All right. Staff input, please.
All right. You've got our comments before you. This is actually a pair, as Ms. Cowan noted, this is a pair of requests. Item F and G on this month's agenda are from the same applicant. One is seeking a traffic signal at Fenwick Boulevard and Northwest 164th Street, and the next item in the agenda is over at North Pennsylvania Avenue and Northwest 169th Street. Of the two intersections, not to jump ahead too far, but the intersection of Fenwick Boulevard and Northwest 164th Street is slightly busier. The traffic volume is slightly higher on Northwest 164th Street as compared to Penn. One thing I kind of want to point out that we noticed during our field observations, we conducted a spot speed study on 164th Street in the vicinity of this particular intersection. One thing that we did notice that the 85th percentile speed running on 164th Street was running at 49 miles an hour, which is about 10 miles above the posted limit. The other thing of note that we point out is that for those people that were observing the speed limit, they represented about 25% of the traffic stream. So basically 75% of all the drivers we observed were traveling 41 miles an hour or faster on this road. And during the course of our study, I think the highest speed that we observed was 56, which would be about 16 miles over the limit. This particular intersection does meet 2 warrants for consideration for a traffic signal. It met Warrant 1, which is the 8-hour vehicle warrant, and Warrant 2, which is the 4-hour vehicle warrant. What makes this intersection a little bit different from the one that's at Penn and Northwest 169th Street is looking to the east on 164th Street from Fenwick Boulevard. There are a number of OG&E utility poles in the right-of-way. They don't constitute a view obstruction based on our subdivision definition of a view obstruction, which is basically something that from a driver's eye height of 3.5 feet and a distance 10 feet behind the curb, they don't constitute a view obstruction, but if you were lined up in traffic, coming out on Fenwick, or you were sitting further back at a viewing distance more than 10 feet off the edge of the road, these things would have a tendency to obstruct what you're able to see coming down the road at you. So in this particular case, action on this item is going to be at the discretion of the Commission. And like noted earlier, this location does meet 2 of the 9 MUTCD warrants for consideration of using traffic signal control. Should the Commission approve the request for a signal at this intersection, we're recommending that approval include roadway widening for a dedicated left turn lane on Northwest 164th Street. And I know, as mentioned earlier, that some people may not think that having a turn lane is necessarily essential for safety, but it allows drivers making left turn the place to pull out of the mainstream of traffic and do so safely. And just for the general information of the audience, in the 2017 general obligation bond that the city passed, under the traffic proposition, more than half the projects included were to widen intersections that already had traffic signals in order to build in left turn lanes. So if there's ever a time to build a left turn lane in, it would be at the time that a signal is constructed to serve an intersection such as this. And aside from that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have.
The turn bay would just be for eastbound left turn?
Yes, because the only other thing that's on the that's out there, OG&E's got a substation on the south side of the road, and they wouldn't really need a turn bay for something like that.
Well, I can vouch. I've had a near miss at that intersection.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5F?
Move approval of the application, including the turn lane, left turn lane.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner George to approve item 5F, which includes the staff recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Do we have any talk on item 5F? Yes, sir.
Of the 2, I could see approving this more than the one on Penn, but looking at the research on this, it seems like part of your problem out there is speeding. I mean, has anyone been notified on this, or?
Yes, a couple meetings ago when we were discussing or presenting items and the discussion of the 85th percentile and speeds came up, it was asked as a courtesy from the Commission that we notify the police department. And once we've conducted a speed study and once we've had a chance to analyze the data, that we forward requests for enforcement if we find areas where basically speed limit observance could be better. Yes, it was done. Matter of fact, it was done for several items in this agenda.
Well, one of the reasons for that speed, and I've always said people are going to drive what they think is safe and reasonable, is there's no development on the south side of 164th there for a way. So you just tend to want to go a little faster up through there. I've observed it either from, I think it's the Walmart neighborhood all the way to the auto store on the other end. That area is going to be tough to enforce.
Captain?
Yes, the speed issue was brought up to the police department, and it was sent out to our solo motorcycle unit on the 20th of February. So we've got just a little bit less than a month of enforcement activity that's gone on. We found that 164th, by and large, had way more speeders than Pennsylvania did. As a part of that, a good estimate of citations issued along 164th was between 30 and 40. Sorry, I can't give you exact numbers, but it was significantly more on 164th than Penn. and most of the vehicles were traveling, like the Commission said, is 10 over the speed limit or more.
All right, thank you, Captain. Okay, any other talk on item 5F? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5F, which includes the staff recommendation from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Can I have your votes, please? Okay. All right, so for staff on item 5F, we understand we're out there and we're doing some extra work, but that's not a long-term fix. Going for funding is a long-term fix, and that gets thrown into the pile of unfunded. Is there anything that can be done to try to slow it down there from now till 3, 4, 5 years, whenever it gets funded?
As far as traffic speeds?
Well, traffic speeds, not slowing down to post it, of course, but anything we can do to help that area until whenever a traffic signal is put in.
I'd probably defer to my colleague in the police department on that.
But they can't be there every day. Is there some sort of physical marking, something, careful sign, caution, blind exit, or I don't know, anything we can do to help? Is there something in our pocket that we can use to help for the next couple of years?
The only thing that we've got available right now is we do have a driver speed feedback unit. It's mobile, and it has to be something that's brought back into the office to be recharged, and it could be worked into our schedule where we place that for other neighborhoods that request its use, and it could be left out there periodically.
But nothing like a caution sign for that traffic on 164th?
No, because we have regulatory signs already in place.
Okay.
Caution sign would be supplemental to a regulatory sign.
Okay, so we can maybe get that car into the rotation that you currently have,
so.
And then you can keep it on the list.
Yes, we'll continue to monitor the speeds there at both PN and 164.
Okay, all right, thank you all. Okay, we go on now to item 5G, Kia Trout, to consider a request for the installation of a traffic signal at intersection of North Pennsylvania Avenue and Northwest 169th Street. Would you guys have anything else to say different for this one? Yes, ma'am.
I will add a couple things for this one. I live on the street directly off of Penn, so I use that exit every day. I never go through the neighborhood. I exclusively use that exit. And I know the speeding was not as much of an issue on Penn, from what the report says. The congestion, though, is bad. And in the mornings, coming from the north, like I said, I took video and all that, but you can stand there, sit there at that intersection, see people coming from the north. There's a school zone up there, so everybody slows down to 25. That gets everybody all backed up. Everybody's coming at the same time. So finally, after they all get through, the other morning I was pulling out, it was about 7:30, and the traffic was backed up all the way from 164th and Penn, that light there at Brahms, or the AutoZone, backed up all the way past our neighborhood entrance. It was standing still, and people were still coming. And so whenever, it's like I said, about the kids, about anybody really, you're sitting here waiting for this break, you're going to go, people are behind you, your neighbors are behind you, somebody starts honking, everybody's mad, it's not a good way to go to work, but I don't want to dodge out there and get killed. I don't want to hurt somebody else. So that's the main reason for the light there. If it can't be proved by the speeding, it's congestion. So, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else wanting to speak about item 5G? Sure, yeah, please.
I would just like to say it's very similar situation. Maybe not quite as heavy a traffic on that road, but it is very similar to the other exit.
All right.
And I'm in favor.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
So I actually live over by the Western Gate, and we have those really long stretches of Western with no stoplights, and the police are pretty heavy over there. Most of my family has met them there. I've got some young drivers. But they don't, I mean, I know that when I'm going home, I don't go up Penn from Memorial. I go down to Western because of the stoplights. I think that the stoplight would help with that. And I also agree in the widening, because they widened Western, which drove me nuts because the back of my house is up against Western. But I can get in and out of my neighborhood much easier on Western than the other two gates because of the widening. And so I think, I mean, that's one reason why that's not one of the gates that's coming up. But I just don't even go over to the Penn one, because that one, to me, is the worst. That's the one that I avoid when I'm coming up that way.
Okay. Anybody else on 5G? All right, staff?
All right, you've got our comments before you. This item is very similar to the previous one considered. The volumes on Pennsylvania Avenue and on Northwest 169th Street are similar, but they are lower than the ones that were on 164th at Fenwick. This particular intersection meets the 4-hour warrant for consideration of use of a traffic signal. Unlike the intersection over off of 164th Street, there aren't any things that impact a driver's view of what's approaching on Pennsylvania Avenue. In this particular case, action on this item, too, will also be at the discretion of the Commission. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And like I said, like the previous item, if the Commission opts to approve this particular intersection, staff would recommend that it should be approved subject to the addition of a left turn lane on Pennsylvania Avenue at Northwest 169th Street.
All right, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5G?
I have a question for staff. On the property to the west side of Penn, is that already platted? Is that under development at this point? Is it a subdivision going in there, PUD, or do you know?
Yeah, I think it's just got oil.
The whole property?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
if you could come up and say it up to the mic, please.
It's a oil-filled water flood. They take water from the wells or whatever. It's a disposal.
Really?
And so they will most likely be there for a long time.
Okay.
Some of the big trucks do, I mean, they do enter and exit there, which is across, they are directly across from the fire station that's right to our south. So it would also, a light there could also be beneficial to those trucks, being able to pull in and out maybe slow some things down. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5G?
Question.
I'm sorry? We have another question, comment?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a concern about this, because that's within 5 blocks of 164th, within 5 blocks, 173rd. There's obviously going to be a request eventually for 173rd. I'm wondering if we should do a little checking at 173rd first and see. I know, even though it met the 4-hour warrant, that means it was busy 4 hours of the day. Okay, at 20 hours it wasn't. But the signal's still going to be working, stopping people on Pennsylvania. We understand that, right? So people...
Do they have don't some signals have where there's sensors, like they can sense?
I'll let Stuart explain that, but yes, but still, it still operates. It just takes one.
Okay, you want to repeat the question? I was engaged for a moment.
What's the question? What's your comment or statement?
Oh, I was asking about the, for this area from 164th to 178, you got 173rd intersection also to look at, and I'm sure it's going to be coming. I'm just wondering, I know it met the 4-hour warrant, this study did, and I was explaining, we know what that means, that 4 hours out of the day, there was enough traffic to impede. I don't know what the delay study Did you do a delay?
At this intersection, no.
Huh?
No, not at this particular intersection.
Okay, see, another study could be done is just exactly how much delay and whether that delay was enough to offset the request. But the fact that it did meet the major warrant, which kind of tells us that, yeah, there's a signal needed. I'm just wondering if we ought not look this whole area over this mile there, and what's happening at 173rd? They're going to be wanting a light too, right? Yeah. Probably.
They'll be jealous.
More than likely. So,
yeah.
You see what we have to consider too. I mean, we know that we don't want to hold all signal lights all up and down Pennsylvania. It is a major arterial street, and it's, to carry traffic.
Yeah.
So every time you put in a traffic control device, you're changing the level of service of that facility. Sometimes these can be things you wish you didn't have later on.
Right. Right. And I understand that. I just don't understand how else to go about it to make it safer.
Okay. Well, we'd look at accident history to see if there's been an accident, the potential for one, and we have to weigh that with the overall level of service for the roadway to make our decisions.
And like, the accidents that were reported, like I said, they go back 2015, 16, 17, and that's really before we had this super influx of congestion. So I don't know what it's going to say this year, next year, and the year after.
Well, very seldom do the intersection beat the crash warrant. It's got to be, signal's got to be correctable of 5 crashes in a year. Very seldom we get that. Most of the time, accidents go up when you put a signal in. You have your rear end accidents because people are not expecting it. I'm just wondering. I mean, I appreciate your concern, but I know there's going to be some other concerns, and I really have to keep the level of service of arterials in mind too. But that's my concern.
Yeah, the intersection that you're talking about, that's 100, is that 173rd? Copper Creek?
They come out 173rd, though, Gold Drive.
Okay, ma'am, if you're going to speak, you need to be at the mic. I'm sorry, thank you.
We actually, we have a street that goes all the way through, up through Copper Creek, and so sometimes our people have to go up through there to get out, but then also sometimes their people are coming down here. So it is a shared problem.
We've discussed the traffic coming from the north through our neighborhood because the gated areas have speed bumps, but I guess they cannot put those. I mean, there's mixed feelings about those anyway, but they can't put those on that street that it's like a highway. And Kia is actually, she's the one that started all this. She lives on the street that becomes the highway from the north where they come down. And it's dangerous at her intersection. She's called you guys countless times about somebody on the corner. So we do get traffic from 173rd already coming into our neighborhood to go out our other 2 exits that we were talking about today. So I don't know, if I don't know how much they'll be there because some of them do cut through.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, sir, please, come on up.
I agree that we don't want traffic signals all up and down Penn. I agree with that. The thing about it is that this intersection obviously hasn't put in an application for a light at 173rd Street, which the problem is that I think that would help us if we had a light there, but if there's no application for that, we kind of have to look at our interest where we're at. That's why we're applying here. Yes, I agree that light would be a reasonable light. If they don't put forth an application, it doesn't help us. And that's what we're seeking to do is help our people coming in and out of our addition that are facing safety issues. So that's where I think I stand on that, is that unless they have a pending application, we kind of have to look at our interest here, and because who knows when they might put one forth. It's just not going to help us until they do. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5G?
I'm going to make a motion to deny it.
We have a motion from Commissioner Miller to disapprove item 5G. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Hale. Do we have any discussion on 5G? Sir.
Could anybody share about what year this neighborhood development started?
My house was built in 2000.
2000. Okay, so, and then do all the streets in this neighborhood, would they have access to the previous application intersection at 164th and Fenwick Drive? Could everybody make it to that intersection?
For me, like I said, I live on the street directly off of Penn, the first street off of Penn. So for me to drive through the neighborhood all the way down, it's probably close to 3/4 of a mile through the neighborhood for me to go out that intersection.
Right.
It would be entirely unrealistic for me to ever choose to do that. That's why I don't do it right now.
But you could. And I'm not being sarcastic. You could.
I could.
So what I'm thinking, and I don't know what the process would be, I agree with the forecast that Commissioner Miller has shared. Is there any way to consider a formal traffic study from 164th to 178th and take a look at the other neighborhoods, ingress and egress onto Pennsylvania, and see if there might be a better solution than just putting a traffic light here now and then worrying about this other intersection later? Maybe it's a speed limit reduction. Maybe there's other things that we could do to make that safer for Fenwick and the neighborhood, which I don't know the name of farther north.
Copper Creek.
Like a formal traffic study.
We could run a warrant study at the intersection of Penn and Northwest 173rd Street. We don't have any requests for a traffic control like that. Now I'm going to go back a little bit in time, because years ago the city had considered, or the Planning Commission, the City Council had considered requests that come from the neighborhood to separate these two additions on a street called Platinum Lane. Ultimately that wasn't approved, so Platinum Lane is still there, and it provides a link between these two additions, which would allow you cross-access to get to various traffic control devices. And it's one of those things that if you build a traffic signal on a street exiting an addition, it may be a little bit more further out of your way to use it, but some people will use it or instruct their kids to use something like that simply because it takes a little bit of the more difficult decision-making process as to when to find a suitable gap to turn left and to, say, like to get out from the neighborhood onto a street like Pennsylvania Avenue. So, I mean, once you make a traffic control change like installing a signal, you will probably it will have an influence on what happens traffic-wise within the addition. And like I said, in the past there has been, just the cross-traffic between the additions was a source of contention once upon a time with, cut-through traffic and speed being kind of the primary driving forces to have this particular roadway closed. Ultimately, it was not voted that way, and the road's still intact today, but it's just one of those things to carefully consider, because the addition of a signal maybe on Pennsylvania Avenue may influence more traffic onto 169th Street. It's a kind of a little bit of a catch-22, build it and they will come.
Yeah. What is I see a lot of neighborhoods, like I said, I drive to all different neighborhoods all the time. I see some neighborhoods up around that area that have stop signs. What would that do you think, to the flow of traffic? Would it be possible to put a stop sign there? I mean, everybody would have to take turns then. We could take turns pulling out. It wouldn't be a traffic light that would run 24 hours a day, but it would control the influx of traffic coming from the north or the south, depending on the time of day. Everybody would have to stop at least a rolling stop, and give somebody a chance to get out of the neighborhood. I know it's going to make people mad, but they're not the ones pulling out of our neighborhood.
You know what's going to happen? Remember that queue you told me about, and the light comes and you have to hold, they're backed all the way up? Well, they're all going to be waiting to get through your stop sign while you're sitting here with 1, 2 cars. They're all sitting there going, what are we waiting on up here? You see the delay that would cause? That would drop the level of service on Pennsylvania Avenue a whole letter grade. If it was running at a D, it'd drop it to, raise it to an E or an F. In other words, it would be less traffic could move down that because of all the stop. That's why we don't cater to stop signs on arterial streets.
Right, and we don't have any mid-mile stops like that currently. The last ones we did have were temporary, and they've since been signalized. It's one of those things that kind of violates driver expectation. You know, for most people driving in Oklahoma City, you don't expect to stop at a major intersection, especially when you get out to maybe the rural areas. You anticipate a stop at the major section line intersections, but you know, within the corporate limits, especially in an urbanized area like this, it's very unexpected to encounter a stop sign away from a major intersection.
Okay. Do we have any idea, timeline, or anything as to when construction on Highway 74, how that is going? Because I do believe that, like I said earlier, that is a big part of our issue. If people could get over there and get on 74 to go down, you know, it turns into Hefner Parkway, they would choose that every time because they're going to be able to go 60, 65 instead of 40. And that will free up some of our, so I didn't know what kind of timeline we have on 74 getting, I mean, they've been working on it for, a long time.
Yeah, I don't have that information. We can probably find it. It's an ODOT project, so we would have to find the project manager on that, see if they've got an estimated completion date for it.
Yeah, I think once that gets completed, then I think it may help relieve us some, but until then, yeah. I'm hoping that it will relieve us anyways. So.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Okay, any other talk on item 5G?
Yeah, I think, you know, the idea, which is a good one, about looking at 173rd Street, just that, how that interacts with Penn, along with the intersection we're looking at now. But I think if we put the light where they're wanting to put it, the application today, that will help 173rd. I mean, because if you're stopping people there, that's going to give people on 173rd a chance to get out. Just like if we put one on 173rd, it will help this location. So I think, you know, I think Penn between 178th and 164th needs a light, okay? And this application's here today, 173rd is not. I think wherever you put it is going to help the other intersection. So, you know, I think widening this with a turn signal and approving this today would be fine with me, FYI.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Commissioner, but it also, would it be better to put it at the one that needs it the worst? It's going to help both of them. But if we pick it, the other one, if we get by with one instead of two?
Yeah, I'm not sure we need two, but I think we probably need one. You know, so I guess if you want to ask for a study on 173rd, and we can table this until that comes back.
We can certainly run a warrant study. We won't present it as an item on the commission's agenda without an applicant, but we can conduct a warrant study over at Penn and 173rd. It would be done to the same level.
The traffic on Penn is going to be the same, and should be, right? And the speed should be fairly close to the same. It's just whether or not 173rd has more traffic than whatever street that is.
169th.
169th, right? So that's the only differences.
Well, it looks like under 73rd serves two additions across Pennsylvania. Right. The other one is just coming out of one side.
Right.
Can you not count the houses that have access to that 173rd and figure out how many? I mean,
You probably could.
Wouldn't that be cheaper for you if there were 50 houses versus, I mean, I don't know, I don't live over there, I don't go there, but would the traffic from 50 houses be as great as the traffic from, I know we have 700 total in our neighborhood? I don't know how big that neighborhood north.
Yeah, we conduct traffic counts, and we can even do turning movement studies. But, a driver's decision to, how they access the arterials, sometimes it's different from their from like a morning period than it is to an afternoon period. It just depends on their destination. So with this area being substantially developed, we would just conduct actual counts in order to run an analysis.
Okay. Sir?
Instead of just denying this, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the balance of that stretch. I think that would be a wise thing for the commission to do. And look at this again in a month.
Could you do it in a month and have this back on April?
Yeah, we could have the item back. If this item was continued to the April meeting, we could have it on there, and we should have enough time to be able to run a warrant analysis over at 173rd and Penn.
Okay. Okay, so we go to Mr. Miller. You're the one that has the motion on the floor.
Can I make a comment before that?
Okay, go ahead.
The reason I am not in favor of the lighted intersection as presented is for a couple of reasons. First off, I'd like to see the effect of the motion of the last item, see if that impacts this other intersection and what degree. The other thing is, it's my understanding that even if we do this study, that without a request for a light at 173rd, that there would be no action on our part. If it comes back that, yes, a light at 173rd would be more appropriate, even if we found that, without a motion or a request from someone, that it would just kind of be tabled. Is that correct?
Well, with the information, say we were to present the intersection of 173rd and Penn. I mean, just provide for informational purposes at the next month. I mean, at least the commission would have the ability to weigh which one might be a better suited candidate for maybe considering the use of a signalized intersection, and then from there, maybe neighborhood representatives can go and visit with, because the entrance coming out on 169th Street is coming out of the Fenwick addition, is it not? Yeah, and see, the other one would be coming out of the Copper Creek addition. So it would probably be, I would tend to think that residents in the Copper Creek addition may have an interest in saying one way or the other, because, like I said, in the past there's been a push to close Platinum Lane, which links the Fenwick and the Copper Creek addition. So it might be one of those things that could actually increase some traffic through the Copper Creek addition if Fenwick residents use that particular one. It's not to say that it's perfectly acceptable because they're all open public city streets, but it's
right.
One of those things that I think that residents in the Copper Creek addition should be fully aware of and go in, know what may or may not be coming.
And as you said earlier, it may increase traffic into this. If you put a light there, people may pour out of Copper Creek into coming down your street. Use the light. So, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's perfectly possible.
Well, I still emphasize it only met the 4-hour warrant. It didn't meet the major warrant. So my motion stands.
Okay, motion stands. Does the second still stand?
Yes.
Okay. So, anything else?
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You saying that we might need to wait until the one goes in on 164th
No.
first? Okay, because if it took 3 years to get that, then we would be waiting 6 years. So I just wanted to make sure.
Right. No, that's somebody else. Somebody had brought that up, but that's basically we're going to vote right now to approve or disapprove, and then so if this motion doesn't pass, then I think we'll hold off till next month, and they'll do a traffic study or not a full study, but on 173rd to see how that correlates with your intersection, because there probably just needs to be one light between the mile. And so if that intersection is much more, meets 2 or 3 of the criteria, it would be beneficial to put the light there, not on yours. You know what I'm
If
saying?
it doesn't pass.
'Cause right now-
Because you want to do that, then how long, don't we have to wait before we can ask for it again? Or is it still going to kind of stay open someplace? Because you'll be making us wait
Okay,
longer.
once it's disapproved, it's 6 months before you can reapply.
Right.
But if you're going to investigate the other one,
Well, we're not. Right now, we're voting on it.
Yeah,
And-
right
and
now
we know
we're
there's
just voting
two
on
yes
an item.
votes
We're not doing
against it.
anything with anything else.
Okay, I have to tell Keo if she has to come back.
Right.
Okay.
All right, ma'am.
If we basically come back to it next month, if we're able to do the study off of 173rd, what are requirements for, like, me taking video and getting that ready to be turned into you guys? Because I really would like to provide you with a visual from that intersection.
I'd ask you to get with Ms. Coyne and submit that to her as soon as you can, because anything that we show before the commission, basically, we need to vet it for content.
Okay. Yeah. And I would just also like to say that we are the ones that took the time to put the application in.
Right.
We're the ones that are here. 173rd, they, maybe in the future they'll do their own thing, but this is ours right now. So I would like to remind you guys of that.
Okay. All right, any other talk on item 5G? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5G from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is not disapproved. So, do we have another motion concerning item 5G? That motion was not approved.
Yes.
So
I
do we have
move
a
that we
motion?
defer this till next month and ask that the planning department do a traffic speed study on 173rd.
Traffic Management Division do a speed study.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner George to defer item 5G with a request to staff to do a speed study on 173rd and Penn.
Right.
Or did you want a traffic signal warrant analysis?
Yes.
At 173?
Yes.
Traffic.
Okay, because
Okay. No,
the
that's
speed study is incumbent. It's
Okay.
included as part of that.
Okay, yes. And so this will come back up next month,
Good.
but we'll just have more information
Okay, so we have,
to see whether or not the commission feels like we should approve yours.
Right, and then we can come back and
You need to come back
attend, yes.
next
Okay.
month,
Okay.
April 15th.
okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner George to defer item 5G till April 15th
Yes.
to do a traffic study at 173rd and Penn. Is that the right term?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have a second on this motion?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Littlefield. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner George to defer item 5G to the 15 April meeting and to do a traffic study at 173rd and Penn, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, we'll see you next month.
Okay, and for those people in the audience that would like to get an advance copy of the report when we publish it, which would be the middle of the week preceding April 15th, if you can leave like an email address with Ms. Coyne, then we'll see that you get notice at the same time that the applicant gets a notice on it.
Okay. We go on now to item 6, comments from citizens. Anybody out there want to address us? Yes, sir, please come on up. We already have your card, so.
I would just like to thank the commission for hearing us and considering what we're asking you to do. Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, anybody else wanted to address item 6, comments from citizens? Okay, we go on now to item 7, reports from the traffic commissioners, et cetera. We'll start with Ward 1, Commissioner Clare.
Nothing to report?
Commissioner Littlefield,
I have et cetera.
et cetera.
Last month, Commissioner Milner, Commissioner Schuline, and I were invited to a Neighborhood Alliance presentation. It was entitled, I think, Sidewalks, Streetlights, and Streets, I think was it. And Eric Winger was the keynote speaker, a couple folks from the planning department. And it was really, really interesting to hear from the audience, which is quite a large group of folks, speak about what they are aware of and what they're learning about the ASAP program. And I just wanted to pass it on that little by little here, we're getting involved in that, so I think that that's great. The other comment that I want to make, Commissioner Powers, Planning Commission, and I have worked together for many, many years. And it infuriates me when I see these neighborhoods that are 14 years old where these developers aren't being held, they're building these grand entrances to these neighborhoods, and they're not being held accountable for the streets that service them. And you mentioned, Stuart, something about now they're being required to do a fifth lane on new developments. Earlier in the discussion today, I thought I heard you say something about that, where they're building neighborhood entrances. The developer is being required to do that with the street. No, I misheard that.
No,
part of Plan OKC.
No, it may be a future component of Plan OKC. It might be a change to the subdivision regs, but no, at this point in time, any traffic impacts, the city addresses through the collection of an impact fee. So developers aren't required to necessarily make any improvements to the roadway network. Unless,
too bad.
Unless it's something that they're pushing for, like they want to have like a signal at their entrance, then they could make an application to this body for that. But otherwise, no, they don't turn in studies anymore.
It's just sad to me that these gigantic neighborhoods have one or two ways out, and it's not until 14 years down the road that we have a problem, and then it's 2 or 3 years later before the solution gets implemented. I think that that's unfortunate. It's also difficult for me to consider a neighborhood like this one in particular that has two forms of ingress and egress, and that the only solution that they're looking for are lights at both. You know, that could be really problematic, as Commissioner Miller was saying about neighborhoods down the road in every direction. They're all going to be coming to us wanting red lights. So it frustrates me. Thank you.
Okay. Go on now to Commissioner Hale.
Just real quick, I want to thank Stuart for acting on the request to notify Oklahoma City Police. I want to thank Oklahoma City Police for following up with that request. And the reason I feel real strong about that is so many people will come in, they'll request a stoplight, and it's going to be 3 or 4 years before anything's done. But if the police department's been made aware of the problem, at least it should give some relief on the short term until the lights can go in. So thanks to you both.
Over to Commissioner Schuline.
This is kudos for Stuart today. I want to
I know,
thank you,
this is a
Stuart, as
good
well.
day.
Recently, last Monday, I think I heard on NPR on the way home that Oklahoma City was number 3 in the country among cities over 500,000 for pedestrian fatalities on a per 100,000 population basis. That's alarming. I think something we should be aware of, and Stuart very promptly provided the data that showed where those fatalities occurred in 2016. That was the basis. And I was happy to see that we also provided data from 2017, which showed that actually our pedestrian fatalities declined. And that would make a significant difference in our ranking on a nationwide basis. Just a few fatalities would make a big difference. And I think that your results, the data you provided, was consistent with that, the information noted in that study, that a lot of fatalities occur along long stretches of highway, not lighted, where there are no sidewalks. And I hope that our really ambitious sidewalk project, through maps and other things, will significantly reduce the number of pedestrian fatalities in the future. And of course with ASAP and other things that we're doing. But anyway, Stuart, thank you very much for providing that, and I thought it was very informative.
Right, and if I recall, about 10, 15 years ago, the city, just for that reason, for that concern, we changed all the streets to two-way streets and made them the 2-lane, all the downtown stuff. I mean, that was all done for that reason, to make it better for downtown people to walk. And then now bike and now everything else that we got going on. So yes. Mr. Miller?
I just want to mention that I attended the workshop.
Sorry. There you go.
I just want to mention I attended the workshop that Commissioner Littlefield, Milner, and Schuline, and they did a wonderful job. One of the things that I got, and when we got around to talking about the traffic calming, did not Mr. Winger make the mention that traffic calming needs to be looked at the planning stage and right in the room with the developers? He said that, and that's where I think it ought to start too. Because these neighborhoods that were built earlier, like you're saying, some of the traffic calming was never even thought of. But other than that, I enjoyed the workshop.
I guess a question for Stuart. On these big, end up being big subdivisions, are there any requirements for developers to put in lights up front to, if you're going to have this 1 or 2 grand entrances that are going to funnel the 500 or 600 homes out of two entrances, shouldn't there, now we're 20 years into it now, but and we're looking at lights, but what about going forward? There's addition every couple of weeks coming in. So are they thinking about that now, putting in lights requirements?
Well, the way that, as far as how the planning process works now, developers are paying basically a traffic impact fee and a parks impact fee in conjunction with the development. And a lot of times that's collected at the time that a building permit is pulled for like an individual lot within an addition. But impact fees were adopted a few years ago, and they replaced the requirement that we used to put on them to turn in a traffic impact study. If we would look at an addition and see that it was going to have a significant traffic impact, we would request studies of the developer that might look at certain key intersections, whether they be section line intersections or a primary entrance or something along that line to see whether or not they needed any form of traffic control. Well, with the adoption of impact fees, that's no longer required. So if a new subdivision comes in now and the developer is interested in pursuing like a lighted entrance or something like that as part of it, they would submit that separately. But it's not a requirement as far as the subdivision process.
But hopefully the impact fee is set up to help compensate or to pay for the light. The money's there for the light because of the impact fees. So now it's up to us to decide when to spend that money. Is that right?
It is, and there are 4 contracts out right now, and we've had reports come back in from consultants, and what they're doing is they're looking at each one of the benefit areas that was defined when the impact fee ordinance was adopted. We've identified certain projects that probably ought to be built with those impact fee monies, but that process hasn't been completed yet. The one thing, the way the ordinance is written, is that the impact fees have to be spent on capacity improving improvements. Basically, they have to, like widening a roadway would be considered a capacity improvement.
Gotcha.
Using construction of a traffic signal, especially if it didn't have like a turn lane associated with it, wouldn't necessarily be considered a capacity improvement.
Gotcha.
Because if you think in terms of like a traffic signal being like a valve in a water line, it can regulate how much gets through. I mean, from all the way closed to full open, but it does not increase the capacity of the pipeline it's attached to.
Gotcha.
So right now, the way that impact fee is set up, it's to fund capacity building improvements.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Sir?
If I may take a second, again, I thank you as well for that information that you sent. It was fascinating. And it was not 2 hours after I read that the other night. I was watching TV. I have no idea what channel. It was a European country somewhere that is having the same issues with trying to control pedestrian accidents. And that study was about pedestrians walking using cell phones. And they had installed a device on the curb that emitted some kind of a green color that was so obnoxious that it took the pedestrians' eyes off their phone and put it on the street. And it was like this test thing that they were doing, but apparently the results were coming out great. But can you imagine a society where we're trying to save pedestrian deaths, and the reason why many of them may become victims is because they're looking at their cell phones while they're walking across the street, and then it's up to folks like us to figure out how to get them to stop doing that? And is the solution electronic? It's just wild.
All right. Going over to our member at large.
I don't have any.
Nothing? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Counselor? Anything else, Captain? Nothing. The only thing I have is on this ASAP, and we've asked for months now, Stuart, can we move and get something else in our toolbox? Because there's really nothing there, and we all know that speed humps, something of that nature, would be number one in the toolbox. And we talked about that there is a process of how we might be able to, neighborhoods be able to get speed humps or whatever. Can that move on and we get something?
Well, actually, as a result of that meeting that several members of the commission attended, we've had a number of neighborhood associations make contact with us, and they're interested in the program. At this point in time, we've run at least one study that we've completed. It's a preliminary study, and it's actually looking at North Tulsa Avenue between Northwest 50th and Northwest 63rd Street. It's a 30-mile-an-hour collector street. It's got neighborhoods on both sides of it. But like I said, it's posted 30. It's a collector street, but it has no traffic controls on it between 63rd and 50th, so it's a 1-mile section. And at this point in time, we've collected data, and it's now a function of, I think, a neighborhood association coming to terms with, do they want to invest in like speed cushions, which are like speed humps, except they've kind of got grooves for wider wheelbase vehicles such as ambulances and fire trucks and that sort of thing. So we're just waiting for a neighborhood association to be able to participate in this, because, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of interest in our alternative speed abatement program, but it's a neighborhood-funded initiative. So the city doesn't have the funding to put these things out. We participate by installing them for neighborhoods. We do not fund them for the neighborhoods.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood, but it was my understanding that we were going to put those things in the toolbox, and then when a neighborhood came in and said, I'd like to have item 4, which was the 30-mile-an-hour speed hump or speed, whatever you want to call it, compared to this neighborhood that wants that 25-mile-an-hour speed hump, and it was going to cost them whatever the number that was going to come up, and I thought a number was going to be put against it. That would be $1,500 for a 25-mile-an-hour speed hump on a 16-foot wide road, that was going to be in the toolbox ready to go for when we had situations. Is that not true? Or
well, at this point in time, if we can get some neighborhoods that will participate in this, because the city doesn't have any standards. I mean, if you put one, do you use one on a roadway? Do you use 2? Are there any other conditions that need to be looked at? So we will be learning as much from these initial deployments as some of the neighborhoods will. We don't have answers to those questions yet, and that's what.
Well, but the way I understood it, going back last year or so, was that we created the framework of the ASAP program, and we had things that we could put into it where neighborhoods could go, and yes, we want to do a test of something, but we don't have anything in there that they could even go test. That's where I'm going, is I thought that the city was going to go out, find stuff that could work, that we would be okay with on our roads, and it would sit there, and then we would go look for a neighborhood that would be willing to go ahead and pull that product, test it for us, and then once it's all done, then it's done. You're saying that we're going to go the other way. We're going to let somebody else go find something, and then we'll like it at the end. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's probably that you're on the right track.
On the second one?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was the first one.
Yeah, because like I said, this is a neighborhood-funded thing, so we've not purchased.
No, but we would be able to tell them for $1,500 you could put in item 1, for $2,000 item 2. Both of them are approved by the city. So let me go to the subcommittee people. Which way did you think it was going?
The way I understood it, and it made sense to me, and I believe, and if I'm incorrect, but we definitely have driver feedback devices in that toolbox. They're there. Okay, and like the speed humps, speed tables, things like that, we're going to get entered into the inventory as they were tested. which is what Stuart is talking about on Tulsa Avenue. Where I would like to see some more action is brought up a couple of times here, Class 10 Penn neighborhood and the painting in the intersections. Do we have any feedback on any impact that those painting projects may have had? Street painting, the illusions of making streets narrower with paint, things like that, I think we all agreed were really cost-effective things. And I know that we're all waiting with bated breath to give those a try somewhere. I don't think a neighborhood association exists that's going to come to us and say, gee, we'd like the sides of our road, this particular road painted to give it the illusion that it's narrower. I think that those need to be things that staff can present to a neighborhood that comes forward with a cut-through traffic problem or a speeding traffic problem. And then I would be hopeful that staff would be able to say to that neighborhood, well, we have, let's try not to do stop signs. Let's see if we can slow people down by throwing down, $500 worth of, bright green paint or something like that. How those mechanisms get in the inventory, I don't have an answer to that. But that's how I understood that inventory would grow.
Okay. Was that anybody yet? Okay.
I actually have a question. So if a neighborhood comes in, because being at that workshop, I think we were sitting down and somebody asked us about that. If they come and they want to do speed humps, do we have like an item that we tell that neighborhood, well, you need to look at this? Or right now, is it just, well, you could do speed humps, do the research, see what you can afford, and then get back to us?
Which is exactly what I thought was going to happen.
Because if we're leaving it up to that,
we, the city, was going to go out, find humps, bumps, whatever, come up with an estimated cost from contractors of what it would take to put in, and then we would have that, and then when a neighborhood did want to test one, they kind of had a thought of where to go. I wouldn't even know where to go.
Because right now, that we're leaning on this program that I know you guys spend a lot of time on, to neighborhood volunteers to do some of the research, and that could take quite some time to come to fruition then.
Is this Tulsa project with speed tables, is there is it ongoing? Is it something that you think that...
The study information we returned to the person who contacted us. And so the last time that I spoke with him, he was preparing to send information back to his neighborhood association so it could be distributed to see whether or not there's interest within the association to pursue something like this. Because ultimately the residents are the ones that live with this.
Yeah, I think that is a good process.
Right.
But maybe to help Walt, let's say that they are, and they go, yeah, let's go for it. Isn't that a test of the speed table device?
Yes.
Would that be something that the city would help participate financially with that initial neighborhood?
With the installation.
The installation?
Yeah. If they'll purchase the devices that they're happy with, then we would look at, because we've had several neighborhoods that have contacted us, and they've given us a whole host of streets where they want these things placed. And I said, well, we need to find out whether or not there's even there's anything related to anything that we ought to be concerned about, whether it's, a sufficient volume, or if they've even got a speeding. A lot of times the speeding can be a perceived thing. And there may be just one or two people that drive, people to distraction because they seem to disregard laws when it comes to speed limits, but most other drivers do.
Well, but speed tables can also help with cut-through traffic because they aggravate people. So, it's always been my contention that a neighborhood knows more about itself, I think, than outsiders do. So I think that if a neighborhood really wanted to try speed tables, we'd let them try it. Regardless of necessarily what the same criteria would be necessary for a stop sign, for example. Let these folks try it and see if it makes a difference. And I'm with Walt. I don't know what the process is for filling this the shopping bag width. I really don't know what the process is. I think it's
Again,
just try it.
I thought that was already established, that the city was going to go find options, and then when a neighborhood wanted to test it, they just pull that option and we go test it. So I would ask the subcommittee to maybe reassess this part of ASAP, especially when it comes to like the painting, like you talked about. What would be the right color painting, how much, whatever, when it goes to landscaping, when it goes to the speed humps and all that kind of stuff. Do we want the city to go look for stuff and let's put things in there, and then people can say, okay, I'll try the painting, I'll try this, I'll do this. But I thought that was the next logical step.
We were hopeful that would be inside the initial step.
Right.
But yeah, the next logical step apparently is let's do that, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And
once you get two or three different kind of humps, bumps, a 25-mile-an-hour one, a 30-mile-an-hour one, things with grooves, things without grooves, whatever, then things can move on. But I don't think it's something that we want neighborhoods to go out there and try to find. I think it's something that we want them to try to use something we have in our box.
Stuart, would there be somebody in staff that JB and I could meet with where we could learn about street paint, where we could learn, get some resources for getting some prices on some of these things?
So you can come talk to me about it. I'm sorry, just visit. Because there are a couple intersections that were painted, and I believe we got before and after speed studies on them. And you can see that information. I just made a note to myself to have a brief memo to, a staff memo at the end of next month's agenda.
Great. We'll get it.
Okay.
We'll get together by email and we'll make your appointment.
Okay. So, anybody else have any business for the Traffic and Transportation Commission? All right, stand adjourned.